Hello, my name is Carl Surrey and this is a video tutorial for the Facebook group called Fans of Serif Software. Now this isn't strictly a proper tutorial, it is a look at how similar PhotoPlus is to Photoshop, or more importantly Elements. Now Adobe Photoshop Elements is the cut down version of Photoshop itself. So Elements has a lot of the main features of Photoshop, but not necessarily all of them. So if you want to learn photo editing, 99% of all the videos out there that help you are designed for Photoshop and, to a lesser extent, Elements. So you would have to adapt the Photoshop tutorial to work with PhotoPlus, which is what I have done on a lot of occasions when I've done video tutorials. So if there's a particular thing that you want to do and you can only find a tutorial for it that is a Photoshop one, don't think, oh well, because it's Photoshop I haven't got that, I can't use it. Watch it, learn from it and adapt it to work with PhotoPlus, because there are a lot of similarities between PhotoPlus and Photoshop Elements that will mean that you can convert the Photoshop tutorial to work with PhotoPlus. I hope that all made sense. So what I've done is I've opened a couple of pictures here in PhotoPlus, and I have also opened those same two pictures in Adobe Elements. Now I'm using version 14 of Elements and version X8 of PhotoPlus. There are obviously slight variations from the earlier versions, but basically if you have earlier versions of both these programs, they should pretty much be the same. So let me go back to PhotoPlus. So the first thing I want to look at is the layers. Now down here in the right of PhotoPlus you have the layers display area, and along the bottom you've got the symbol for a new layer, layer groups, the half black and white circle for an adjustment layer. These ones are currently greyed out, but you have add layer mask, add layer depth map and the FX layer. If you go to Elements, the layers are displayed up here, and you can, and above that you have a new layer, the half black and white symbol, which is the adjustment layer, the layer mask, and then you've got a couple of slight different ones where you can lock the pixels. Again, you have the different blending modes. I can't get that at the moment because this is just the background layer, but if I added another layer above that, I could use the blending mode, and you have the opacity. So similarly with PhotoPlus, you've got the blending modes and the opacity. So that side of things is the same. So if the tutorial you're watching asks you to make new layers or adjustment layers, you can do it from down here, following the example on the Photoshop tutorial that you are watching. Now obviously there are even some things that Elements can't cope with in some Photoshop tutorials, because obviously it is a cut down version. So you might watch a Photoshop tutorial and find that you can't do everything in it. There's not a lot I can do about that, because it is obviously Photoshop is a much more advanced program than both PhotoPlus and Elements, but you should be able to do a vast majority of the Photoshop tutorials out there. Right, the next thing I want to look at is the foreground and background colours. Now here in PhotoPlus it is the black and white square up here, and you've got the reset button, and you've got the 2 arrows to switch colours. In Elements, it is down here on the left, and it looks virtually the same. You can reset from here, and then you can switch from the 2 arrows like that. So you can see that already there is a lot of similarities between the 2 programs. Right, let's go back to PhotoPlus. Now, like I said before, if you want to make a new layer, you can just click on the button here. It'll ask you to name it, and then you'd have your new layer above. And in Elements, the same principle. It doesn't ask you about renaming it. You can rename it by clicking on the name. So that is very similar as well. Again, with adding layer masks, like I said before, you've got the logo here to add a layer mask, and in PhotoPlus it's the symbol there, and then that adds a layer mask. So both programs are capable of new layers and layer masks. And then you can have adjustment layers. Now in PhotoPlus you can open adjustments either in layers or in individual tools. Now the adjustment layers are visible here. So for example, if you wanted to add colorize, you could just click on colorize. Or you can use the half black, half white circle and add another one, say brightness and contrast. And this will each add a layer. You can also add a lot of these adjustments by using them just as tools and not as layers. And for that you can come up to Image, Adjust, and then you can pick one of these different adjustments. At the moment, because I'm set on this layer, on an actual tool layer, I can't actually open one, but if I go back to the background layer, Image, Adjust, and then what should we go for? Go for black and white. And then that would change that to black and white. If it wasn't the fact I've got colorize open, so if I close that down, so that has gone to black and white. So let me just undo a lot of that, go back to where I was. So similarly, in Elements you don't have sort of panel where you can see all the adjustment layers, but you can just open them. But you don't seem to have as many adjustments and layers available in Elements. This is partly because some of them are combined. For example, the hue saturation one, if I select that, it opens the hue saturation tool, which is very much like the one in PhotoPlus, but to colorize, all you do is just put a tick in that box, which is something that really PhotoPlus would have. They've sort of split it into 2 individual tools, but they virtually do the same thing. But in Elements, it's just a simple putting a tick in a box, or taking it out of a box just to alter the hue saturation. So, which is why there seems to be less options in Elements, because some of them are sort of grouped together. Right, and also if you want to open, let me just get rid of that for a second. You can also open tools separately, not in layers, and for that you come up to the Enhance menu, and a lot of these are sort of automatic adjustments, but you can adjust colors or adjust lighting and go to like brightness and contrast, and it opens up the brightness and contrast tool as a separate tool rather than in a layer. So again, if in a tutorial you're watching, they come up and say open the brightness and contrast tool, you can do the same thing in PhotoPlus. So that is two different ways that are, the programs are very similar. Another thing is, like, if you're two or more images open, and like you're going to paste one into another, for example, in PhotoPlus, these are sort of grouped down the bottom in this panel that drops up and down, so you can switch between the images. But in Elements, they're just tabs along the top. Obviously you've still got like the File and Edit and what have you menus, so you can come to Edit and copy and paste and what have you in that way. Similarly for PhotoPlus, you've got the File, Edit, and you can copy and paste using that. Right. If you wanted to duplicate a layer in PhotoPlus, you can just right click the layer and come up to duplicate, or you can go to the layers menu and duplicate will be there as well. Again, let me just delete those ones. Right, so we're back to just the one image. If you wanted to duplicate, you can right click, duplicate layer, and layers, you can duplicate layer there as well. One shortcut you can also use in Elements is to press Ctrl and J, and that will duplicate the layer. Let me just delete that. Going back to PhotoPlus, you can't really use Ctrl and J in the same way in PhotoPlus. You can if you make a selection like that, for example, and then press Ctrl and J. It will copy that selection into a new layer, but it won't select the whole layer unless you make a selection area out of it. So there are slight differences in certain parts. Right. Now, looking at the left-hand side toolbar, as we down here in PhotoPlus, you have things like the Move tool, you have the Deform tool, and in the sub-menu from that you have the Selection Deform tool. Then you have the Crop tool, and in the sub-menu you have the Straighten tool. Then you have the Selection Shape, so you can have a rectangular, ellipse, or you can pick some other shapes like hearts and what have you. Then you have the Lasso tools, Freehand, Polygon, Magnetic, Magic Wand tool, Smart Selection Brush, Color Picker tool, the Brush tool, which also includes the Pencil tool and the Picture Brush tool. Then we've got the Clone tool and the Pattern tool. Then you have the Scratch Removal, Blemish and Patch tool. And then we have the Red Eye tool, Smudge tool, Blur tool, Sharpen, Dodge, Burn, Sponge, and Replace Color. Then we have the Eraser, Background, Flood Eraser, Gradient and Flood Fill tool. Then you have the Warp, the Text, Pen tools, and the Ellipse and other shapes, and the Node tool. So you have all these tools, some of them grouped together and all easily available. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on the Clone tool, and as you can see up here you have various options about opacity, brush size and airbrush, align, use all layers running along the top, and each tool, whichever one you click on, will have its options running along the top. In Elements, again, you have a lot of tools down the side here. Some of them will be similar, but you've got the zoom tool and the move tools, which is for zooming in and moving around the picture. The rectangular marquee tool. Now the difference here is the options for when you select a tool are down here in the bottom. So you can select the rectangular marquee tool or the elliptical one. And then you have your other options like feather, aspect. Then you have your lasso tools, which gives you the different ones. So you've got the freehand, polygon and magnetic. Magic wand tool or quick selection is what they call it. You have the red eye removal tool, spot healing brush, the clone stamp, smart brush, blur tool, sponge tool. So again, some of these will be linked. Sponge tool has also got the dodge and burn tools in that little menu down the bottom there. And so as you can see, a lot of these will be similar. You've got the erase tool, so you've got different types of erasers, flood fill, gradient tool, and again you can pick the different types of gradients. Color picker. This will be the custom shape tool, so you can do like hearts and other shapes. Text tool, pen tool, crop. And that's a straighten horizon one. So they are very similar in the selection of types of tools you can have, but they are sort of grouped differently, whereas a lot of them are grouped in PhotoPlus down the left here. In Elements, they are grouped in the panel down the bottom. So anything that's in a Photoshop tutorial, if I ask you to use the sponge tool, for example, you can find it easily from this menu here, but in PhotoPlus you would have to then look on one of the other menus to find it, but it is there. I think it's that one, sponge tool. Yeah. So I'll go back to Elements and I will go to the clone stamp on this one as well. And like I said, they are very similar in their options, because you can change the hardness of the brush, the size, the opacity, the blending mode. You can align them. So very similar options here: opacity, brush, hardness, size, whether it's aligned. So pretty much all the options that they might ask you to use in a tutorial for Photoshop, you should be able to recreate in PhotoPlus. Right. Next thing I want to look at is filters. Now, in PhotoPlus, these are found on the effects layer, where you have things like distort, blur, sharpen, etc. Some of them will open as individual tools. Say for example, if we go to blur, Gaussian blur, it opens as an individual tool. And some will open in the filter gallery. So if I go to artistic and pencil, the filter gallery will open, and it will convert that into the pencil drawing. And then you can, if you want, select different filters to use, whichever one you want. So let me just cancel that. So similarly, in Elements, you use the filter menu, and again, if I like say blur, go to Gaussian blur, it opens up as an individual tool. But if I want to use, say like sketch, and do a pen and ink version. It opens up their own sort of version of a filter gallery, and then you can pick the type of filters that you want. So in that respect, they are slightly different, but they are also the same. And also in the filter gallery in Elements, I've got your plugins that you can use here, and in the effects gallery, the plugins are found here. So again, both programs have very similar features, so if you find it in a Photoshop tutorial, you should be able to find it in Elements. So if you can find it in Elements, it should be easy enough to find in PhotoPlus. Right. Now for beginners of either programs, this wouldn't necessarily be involved in a Photoshop tutorial, but I just want to do a quick covering of this. Apart from going to the help files, there is a sort of help section that pops out from the left hand side in PhotoPlus. But all this really does show you is how to do certain things. It will sort of take you through it. So if you want to, say for example, resize an image, it will give you help on how to go about that. In Elements, you can go to the guided section, but this will actually give you sort of a project which you could do is like to make a line drawing, for example, and then it will help you do that particular task. So it's not necessarily telling you how to do it, you decide which one you want to do, and then it will give you easy options to actually fulfill that task. So they do sort of look at things differently in that way. Right, going back to PhotoPlus. Now up here in the top right, you have the four different tabs. You've got the histogram, navigator, color, and information. I invariably leave mine on color, so you can pick whichever color you want for text and backgrounds and things like that. In Elements, there is nothing there at the moment, but if you go up to Window and then you say you want the histogram, it opens up this tabbed box where again you've got the info, navigator, history, the histogram, different color swatches you can pick, and different actions that you can use. So they are there, they're just not as easily visible as they are instantaneously with PhotoPlus. But again, if the Photoshop tutorial you're looking at asks you to change a color using the color swatch, you can do it fairly easily because you have a color option up here. A lot of the keyboard shortcuts are the same as well. So if you like to select always Control and A, copy Control and C, cut Control and X, undo Control and Z, redo Control and Y, change brush sizes is the Control and left and right square brackets. They're the same in both Elements and Photoshop and PhotoPlus. So again, if someone on a video tutorial you're talking about just says, press Control and C to copy, you know that will work the same. But one of the main ones that doesn't work the same is paste. In Elements, Photoshop, it's just basically Control and V. But with PhotoPlus, Control and V will paste as a new image. But if you want to paste as a new layer, you have to use Control and L. That's the biggest difference that I've sort of spotted between the two programs. Right, and the last one I want to look at is, no, I think that is it actually. Could have made a, so what I'm trying to say to you is that don't be put off by the fact that you can only find a Photoshop tutorial for whatever you want to do. Watch that tutorial, if necessary make notes, and then go to PhotoPlus, and you should find that 9 times out of 10 you should be able to adapt the Photoshop tutorial to work with PhotoPlus. There will be occasions where it won't happen, and if you can't do it in PhotoPlus, you probably won't be able to do it in Elements either. You'd have to have the full version of Photoshop, or in a lot of cases Lightroom, which is also sort of works alongside Photoshop. So if they start making mentions of using Lightroom, you can be pretty certain that you won't be able to complete the task in PhotoPlus. I hope this has all made some sense to you and will help guide you to, or even nudge you towards, looking at Photoshop tutorials, because really they are plenty of them out there, and they are the best way to learn PhotoPlus is by adapting them to work with PhotoPlus, because a lot of the terminology is the same. A lot of the like the clone brush tool here looks like a stamp in PhotoPlus, and it's pretty similar in Elements. So if you watch the tutorial, and he hovers over the clone tool, for example, you will know that that's pretty much the same looking icon in PhotoPlus. Even the text is the same, dodge and burn's the same. So they're all pretty universal, I think. And you probably even programs other than the three I'm talking about here, because there was Corel's Paint Shop Pro. I haven't got it, but I wouldn't be surprised if their dodge and burn symbols are the same and their clone brush is the same, because they want people to be able to use one program or the other. So give it a try, and hopefully you can learn more by adapting a Photoshop tutorial. Thank you for watching.